going on to the next chapter, I don't even know where to start, honestly. And I need you guys to be praying for the sermon today, the message today. I know you probably already have, but just continue to do so. There's been a lot of stuff on my mind lately, just with some things that have occurred, and then you get to tracing that down, and you follow that, and that leads to other stuff, and you just end up stirring up all kinds of stuff that you, like in the end, you kind of wish that you didn't even know about sometimes, but I have brought lessons on the differences between Baptists and Jehovah's Witnesses, right? And I told you some of the things they believed. There have been lessons we brought about my opinions of John Calvin and Martin Luther. And I don't call those sermons because those were more like lessons. They weren't sermons. I didn't mean them as sermons. We talked about Mormons and the difference between Mormons and Baptists. We've talked about Catholicism compared to Baptists. But over the last few weeks, I have also been studying some elements within Baptist circles who are not what I am. Okay? And if I'm going to stand up here and talk about why we're not Mormons and why we're not Jehovah's Witnesses and why we're not Catholics, and why we're not Presbyterian and why we're not Lutherans, right? I also need to stand up here and tell you why I'm not that over there that calls themselves Baptists, okay? And I'm not ready to do all of that quite yet, but I've realized, right, that as I've told people, hey, I'm an independent Baptist, there's some people that look at me kind of weird, and I have figured out that there's two reasons why some people look at me kind of weird. One, they have no idea what an independent Baptist is. What does that even mean? I've heard of a Baptist. I've never heard of an independent Baptist. And they'll ask, right? And that tends to be the whole, we're not part of a convention. We're not part of a hierarchy and a structure and some of that, right? We are a local church that is trying to serve the Lord here, locally, us. And people go, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. Now, some people I have figured out look at me kind of crossways because they have known some independent Baptists. And when you learn a little bit about what they think when you say I'm an independent Baptist, you have to come along and say, yeah, that's not what I mean either. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. And one thing that I found in the course of looking up some of this stuff, there is one thing that is very common in certain groups of independent Baptists. And I am afraid to say that sometimes it has even been within our own ranks of independent Baptists. Thankfully not necessarily prevalent, but it's been there and it has a tendency to creep in. And that is this idea of the pastor ruling with an iron fist. And people will often talk about it being the man of God that cannot be questioned. And I know I'm looking at some of you and you guys are thinking, oh man, he's really taking his life in his own hands right now, isn't he? But listen, biblically speaking is all I want to do. As a pastor, I am not meant to be a tyrant. I am not meant to have dominion over you. I am not meant to be the final say and authority for what you do or you don't do. Most of that, there may be some that comes from a misplaced zeal or a misunderstanding, or maybe they've never been taught any different. But many times, that comes from a place of pride. And I've seen men who may not have started out that way, but that as people lift them up to a pedestal, hey, listen, man in his natural nature likes to be liked, likes to be lifted up, likes to be popular. Not everybody, maybe. Some of you introverts out there might be going, I don't know, thank you. But I'll also say, listen, we as a people also seem to have a natural inclination to lift people up above what they should be lifted up to. We are a really good group of followers sometimes, and we like to latch on to the one. And I get it, I'm not even in my scripture reference yet, but I'm trying to lay the foundation here. Please, please do not ever lift up your pastor to a position that he does not deserve or is not his to have. And as a pastor, I do not want to ever lift myself up to a position and a place that I don't have by rights. It's not mine. I get really uncomfortable when I go to a conference or some kind of an event and like the whole place is a buzz about, oh, he is here. That guy. There's not a conference like any conference that guy has. You start to hear that, and people are in the wrong heart at that point. And I don't mean to be mean, but when people speak in awe at that level of an individual, their focus is in the wrong place. Now, sometimes you can say, well, that person, it's not their fault that people do that. And I think there are times that is true. I have often found, though, that happens to the people that position themselves to be that. And I will tell you, that comes from a place of pride. And it's not what it's supposed to be. I think back to Corinth, where people were arguing and debating over whether or not they were of Paul or Apollos or this or that. And in general, Paul's message to them, which, by the way, he was one of the ones in that list that some people were putting their name behind. But you know, when you study the book as a whole and you study Paul's writings, he would combat that with basically saying, Christ is supposed to be the one mind that you have. You are supposed to be of one mind in the mind of Christ. Man, we are to be focused on, centered around, and lifting up Jesus Christ. I hear these stories, and people that know some of these stories, maybe watching online or whatever, they will probably know who I'm talking about, and that's fine. I'm not going to mention a name. But there was a gentleman, I'm not going to say gentleman, there was a guy who, as a pastor, had lifted himself up so high that as he talked about the faithfulness of the deacons in his church, how faithful they were to the man of God, that if I told them to jump off of a bridge for me, they would do it. And then would proceed to demonstrate and have some deacon or deacons come up front and do some demeaning thing to show the congregation how faithful they were because they would do whatever the man of God said. And there's one recount of this person telling these deacons, sit down, now stand up, now sit down, now stand up. And he would do this in front of the congregation to prove to the congregation how faithful the deacons were to the man of God. It's pride. I would go as far as to say that's not just pride, but that's a desire for worship. That is not what a biblical pastor looks like. There's multiple verses I could go to talk about this, and I'm going to read a handful. I know usually I'm go to a text and stay in the text, but I'm gonna read just to give you several places to show you what the Bible teaches about those that lift themselves up with a proud heart. Let's start in Proverbs chapter 21. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 4. And understand that in Proverbs, listen, Proverbs is a whole book of collections of Proverbs. A lot of these verses are independent. They're not meant to necessarily read the whole chapter. They're also Proverbs, right? There's a difference sometimes between a command and a proverb. Understand some of those differences. But listen, it says, "An high look and a proud heart and the plowing of the wicked is sin." A high look, that's a haughty look. A high look and a proud heart go together, right? Listen, there are times where a person can have a proud heart, but they may cover up the outward, they may be able to hide their lack of humility for a little while. A high look, though, is often something that you can see. A high look is the idea of me looking down my long nose at you and just how far below me you are. You say, why in the world are we talking about this? Listen, there are pastors out there, pastors that claim the name of independent Baptists, that look down their long nose at people. And they have a proud heart. Anybody that gets deacons to just simply by command obey him in some menial task, that is not showing the work of God. That is not showing a servant's heart. That is showing a prideful heart. A high look, a proud heart, and the plowing of the wicked is sin. The plowing of the wicked, that's just like the wicked guy goes out and he does his daily work. He plows his field. But there is no glory to God in that work. A man with a high look and a proud heart is no different than a wicked man plowing his field, and God does not like it. I think it's in Psalms chapter 101. Psalms chapter 101, I believe personally, although the Bible just tells us that it's a psalm of David, it doesn't necessarily give us the time But it seems as if this is a time when David has maybe taken on a leadership position. Maybe when he became king over part of the kingdom. There's debate from some people on that. I'm not going to get too stuck up on where that falls, but the way this psalm is written is very much sounds like David as a ruler laying out how he wants to be as a leader. And listen to this. I will sing of mercy and judgment unto the Lord. Unto thee, O Lord, will I sing. I will behave myself wisely in a perfect way. O when wilt thou come unto me? I will walk within my house with a perfect heart. I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave to me. So far he is laying out a dedication that he wants to be a leader that is not wrapped up in wickedness and sin and other things, right? And he don't want those things to cleave to him. He wants to be a wise person, following the commands of the Lord. Verse 4, a forward heart shall depart from me. I will not know a wicked person. He probably knew plenty of wicked people, right? But you see the heart of what he's saying. He isn't going to surround himself with wickedness. In verse 5, whoso privately slandereth his neighbor, him will I cut off. Man, the guy that is in my court, the guy that's in my counsel, the guy that is close to me, and yet I find out that he is slandering and lying and belittling and tale-bearing, I'm going to put him out. I don't want that. And then he ends verse 5 with this, him that hath an high look and a proud heart will not I suffer. I won't put up with it. David here is saying, man, I'm not going to surround myself with wickedness. I'm not going to surround myself with those that are slandering each other. I'm not going to surround myself with people that have a high look and a proud heart. I'm not going to put up with it. Mine eyes shall be upon the faithful of the land, that they may dwell with me. He that walketh in a perfect way, he shall serve me. He that worketh deceit shall not dwell within my house. He that telleth lies shall not tarry in my sight. I will early destroy all the wicked of the land, that I may cut off all the wicked doers from the city of the Lord. Stuck in the middle of all of that is him saying, I'm not going to put up with the guy that has a haughty look and a proud heart. I'm not going to surround myself with people like that. I want you to turn over to the book of Matthew. There's a story here, right? Matthew chapter 20, and to get the full context, I will back up to verse 20. Matthew chapter 20, verse 20. Then came to him the mother of Zebedee's children, with her sons, worshiping him and desiring a certain thing of him. And he said unto her, what wilt thou? And she saith unto him, grant that these my two sons may sit the one on the right hand, the other on the left, in thy kingdom. But Jesus answered and said, ye know not what ye ask. Are ye able to drink of the cup that I shall drink of, and to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? And they say unto him, we are able. And he saith unto them, ye shall drink indeed of my cup, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit on my right hand, on my left, is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared of my Father. And when the 10 heard it, they were moved with indignation against the two brethren. Now listen, the two sons of Zebedee and the mom, I believe, were wrong, right? Hey, I want to be on your right hand, one on the left. He says it's not mine to give. Okay? But at the same time, the 10, when they heard it, well, they were filled with indignation. But I almost think that the next part is a warning to not just the two sons of Zebedee, but a warning to the other 10. But Jesus called them unto him and said, Ye know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. He was speaking to the apostles. He was speaking to the very people that would be the leaders after he is gone. And he tells them, I don't want this to be a situation where the greatest and the chiefest among you is having dominion over you. It's not meant to be like that. It's meant to be those that are greatest among you are going to be those that are ministering unto you. Those that are going to be servants to you. When you see some of these guys, listen, when you see and you hear some of these guys, ministering and being a servant are two words that do not come to mind. I want to be a servant to the people in this church. I want to be a help. I want to be an encouragement. I want to be able to come alongside you and help and encourage and cry with you and laugh with you. Hey, are there times as pastor I may have to slip a little rebuke there? Yes. But please know that anytime I do it, it is done with a heart of love, and it is done with worry in myself about whether I'm being what I should be and whether I'm being a good example. And I hope it is always that way. But the Lord basically told them, I don't want you to look at this as you're going to get to exercise dominion over everybody else. You need to come in the way that I came. By the way, he came from a position of this and willingly took on a position down here. And he did lead. But man, he showed love and compassion and a desire to come and to be the one thing they needed, which was a sacrifice for their sins. And he willingly gave himself for them. Me commanding somebody to come stand up here and show how you obey every word that you say does not show the heart of Christ. We read it already today, but I think about the time in John chapter 13 where the Lord and Master got down and he washed the disciples' feet. And it was after that he had washed the disciples' feet that he told them that he was giving them a new command, that they would love each other like he loved them. And that it was from that heart and from that attitude that the lost world around them would know these people are followers of Christ. I scratch my head in wonder when I look at some of the stuff that goes on within Baptist churches, and I think, how can the world see that we've been with Christ, that we are Christ followers, when we bite and devour each other and we try to have dominion over each other? It's not good. If you want to write down the reference, we won't read the whole thing again because we already did today, but John chapter 13, verses 31 down through verses 35, if you're taking notes, that is the passage where he tells them that they are to love one another as I have loved you. And by the way, he does say that is a command. There are some things in the Bible that are proverbs. There's some things in the Bible that are wise sayings. There's some things in the Bible that are meant to give us a guidance, a pathway. And there are things that are a command. We are commanded to love each other like Christ loved us. I want you to turn, and this will probably be the last passage that we turn to, but I want you to turn to the book of 1 Peter chapter 5. Keep in mind the proverb about a haughty look and a proud heart and the plowing of the wicked being sin. Think about that as David was laying out how he wanted to be a good leader. One of the things he said he would not suffer was a high look and a proud heart. Think about Jesus Christ and how he got down and washed the disciples' feet and how he commanded them, you need to love each other like I love you. Think about how he told them, you are not to be like the Gentiles who execute dominion over each other, but you are to serve each other. Think about our message this morning in Galatians, how that he said, hey, yes, you have liberty, but don't use it as an excuse for the flesh. And what you do, man, you do it out of love for each other. And you love your neighbor as yourself. And we talked about what that looks like. Now, with all of that in mind, I want you to read 1 Peter chapter 5, starting in verse 1. It says, the elders which are among you I exhort, who am also an elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. And here's what he exhorts them to do. Feed the flock of God which is among you. I've heard others say it, but I'll say it too. It's not my flock. That verse doesn't refer to it as the elder's flock. It is the flock of God which is among you. You are not my people in the possessive sense. Hey, listen, I love you guys, and you are my people. As I am one of you when I say that, right? But a lot of people, when they say, my church, my congregation, my people, my flock, they are saying that from an authoritative sense, that you belong to me. You do not belong. He says, take the oversight thereof. And some people will jump to that part right there and say, see? But listen, you need to look up that word a little bit and study that word a little bit. A good way of this is to say oversee and care for. You know, part of my responsibility is that I am supposed to be caring for you. I'm supposed to be on the watch and beware of things that might come in and cause you harm. Yes, I'm supposed to take the Word of God, and I'm supposed to expound the Word of God to you. And in addition, I am supposed to care for you and to help make sure that those things that would harm and hurt are watched out for. It also means to look carefully. Hey man, you are God's people. And I want to care for you in a way that He would want you cared for. But then it says, not by constraint. That means forced. If I am up here and I am watching over you and caring for you and loving you, well, I don't know that I can do that if I feel like it's my obligation. I really don't want to be here, but man, I feel like God's making me do this. But willingly, voluntarily, not forced, not for filthy lucre. I'm not doing this because of the desire to get. I don't need a private jet. And then it says, but of a ready mind. I looked that up because I honestly, I didn't really know what a ready mind meant. And Strong's gave me a word that I also didn't know really what it meant. When you look up the Strong's word behind that, and I'm not going to pronounce it right, so I'm just going to tell you what the word means. Brisk and cheerful readiness. Brisk and cheerful readiness. Synonyms might be enthusiasm. Man, I'm ready. I want to help. I'm cheerful to help. I'm happy to help. I want to be here. It goes on, it says, neither as being lords over God's heritage. And yes, just in case some people try to say, well, that's not what that means, you look up that word that goes with that phrase, and it means to subjugate, to exercise dominion over. So what does the Bible say when it talks about caring for the flock of God? Hey, when you care for the flock of God, do it for the right reasons. Don't do it out of greed. Don't do it out of what you can get out of it. Don't do it for desire for power or money. Don't do it because you feel forced to do it. Do it because you want to do it. And do it with cheerful enthusiasm. And don't lord it over God's people. Do not subjugate and exercise dominion over God's people. Neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being ensamples to the flock. The word there, ensamples, is this idea of, it's like a pattern. If you look it up in the Strong's, it talks about a die being cast. It's like a mold. I am to feed for and care for you, and a big chunk of the way that I'm going to do that is by trying to be an example for you guys. What kind of an example am I if I demand that you show me respect and follow my every word and do everything I command you to do. Well, I'm not being much of an example. It says in verse 4, "And when the chief shepherd shall appear, ye shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. And likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. Yea, all of you be subject one to another." All of you be subject one to another. "And be clothed with humility. For God," and listen to this, thinking about all the other stuff we've talked about so far, "for God resisteth the proud, and giveth grace to the humble." God resisteth the proud, and he pushes them away, and he turns to the humble. Verse 6, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil is a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. But the God of all grace, who called us unto the eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after that ye have suffered a while, make you perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever." To who be glory and dominion forever and ever? To God be glory and dominion forever and ever. Not the man of God, not the elder. Dominion is not meant for me forever and ever. And that is talking about the God we serve. And in the course of those verses, you know what you see? Man, as the elder, do not try to put God's people in subjection to you and dominion, subjugation to you and dominion. Have a heart of humility and humbleness, because God, listen, you search the scriptures, God does not like a proud heart. God actually has some pretty strong language about pride and a proud heart. Listen, I don't want to ever become the people that I'm thinking about. I don't know how long I will be here. And if this mission work, this church continues on, I want you guys to know what a pastor should look like. It breaks my heart to see the name of the Lord associated with that stuff. Make no mistake. Listen, it is demeaning the name of Christ. It's demeaning the name of Christ. And in a lot of ways, it turns into idol worship, because they are not worshiping God. I feel really serious tonight. But listen, man, this stuff is unfortunately prevalent in some circles. And in some of those circles, I think they have such a watered down version of the gospel, they don't actually have the gospel. I'm just going to be blunt. That's my opinion. But I have also seen it creep into places that I know do have the gospel. And it is wrong, And it is harmful. It is harmful to the churches of the Lord. It is harmful to the name of the Lord. It does not reflect well on the Lord or the gospel. I am thankful. I am thankful that for most of my life, I had a pastor who was humble. He knew how to lead. He knew how to serve. I should say knows how to serve. Listen, he could stand firm when he needed to stand firm. But he had a heart of love, compassion, and a desire to serve God's people. That is a blessing. Now listen, I would be wrong to take him and to put him on a high pedestal and start to follow him. But I will say, he was the right pattern. He was the right example. And he would even tell you, don't follow me, follow Christ. That's the way it should be. And I've seen and experienced the other. And it's bad. And it leads to bad things. Know what a pastor should be. Listen, even if you're not ever going to be a pastor, and I know some of you will never be a scriptural pastor, but know what it looks like. Know what it should look like. But listen, this command about a proud heart, a haughty look, this stuff about being humble and having humility, the stuff about being a servant and not having dominion over each other, you are dead wrong if you think those commands are only to the pastor. You as individuals in this church need to be subject one to each other. You need to be servants to each other. You need to love each other like Christ loved you. And you could spend a whole bunch of time figuring out what all that means. If you want to know what it means, the best thing you can do is study the life of Christ. How did he treat his people? How was he with them? What did he give for them? This is not just about pastors. Those are things that you as individuals in this church need to also be doing. Because I've seen it the other way too. I've seen it where a church is angry and bitter and bites and devours, and they destroy good pastors. It can go that way too, guys. I am so thankful that we don't have that here. It's a blessing. Each and every one of us need to have Christ as our center. And we need to treat each other with the same love that he showed us. All right. I'm going to wrap up there. This is not originally what I intended on preaching. But as I sat down yesterday and tried to finalize my notes and my thoughts about the next chapter in Psalms, I could not get there. And these things kept coming back. And I hope it is helpful to you guys. I hope that somebody listening, listen, we post this on Facebook, we post this on YouTube. I hope somebody listening can benefit from this. The Bible tells us how we should be with each other, and it's pretty clear. And unfortunately, so many people miss it. All right, Brother Philip, would you come and lead us?